Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Our mission today, well, it's pretty straightforward. We're tracking the career of a performer who's genuinely paradoxical, I think. An actor who's just mastered being deeply uncomfortable, intensely dramatic, and, utterly absurd, sometimes all at once.
Yeah, it's quite something.
Looking past the faces you see on your streaming queue and really diving into the life and work of Brett Gelman.
It is a remarkable journey to map out, absolutely. Gelman has sort of perfected playing that intense, hyper-focus, often paranoid outsider figure. But what's really fascinating, I find, is how his training, from classical theater all the way to really avant-garde comedy, how that prepared him to anchor some of the most complex, character-driven prestige TV we've seen in the last decade or so.
Absolutely. And when we talk about Gelman, I mean, two roles just immediately leap out, right? They really anchor this whole discussion.
Yeah.
First, obviously, Murray Bauman, the conspiracy theorist, former journalist in Stranger Things, global phenomenon.
Can't miss him.
And second, Martin, the perpetually abrasive, just morally corrosive husband in Phoebe Waller-Bridge's Fleabag. Incredible show.
Incredible, yeah. We've pulled together a pretty comprehensive overview here, looking at his life, his career, really from the mid-2000s right up to today.
Okay.
And we're looking for those threads, the things that connect the experimental sketch guy, the writer, producer, the UCB regular to the established character actor he is now, tackling these big historical dramatic roles.
Right.
We really want you, the listener, to get a handle on not just what he's been in, but how he got so good at juggling these extremes.
Okay, great. Let's unpack that journey then. Let's start right at the beginning, section 1. The foundations of a comedic voice. It's interesting because, we often think of modern sketch and improv folks maybe bypassing traditional training. But Gelman, he took a really formal route first.
Yeah, and that's, I think, a crucial detail, explains a lot about the gravitas he brings later. Brett Gelman was born October 6, 1976, so that makes him 49 today, October 10th, 2025. Raised Jewish, family roots in Illinois. His dad was a photo salesman.
Yeah.
His younger sister became a speech pathologist. And he graduated high school from Highland Park High in Illinois. So, that initial Midwestern grounding.
But the real pivot, education-wise,
Yeah.
the foundation, maybe, that explains how he can hold those intense dramatic scenes later. That's college, right?
Absolutely. He graduated from the University of North Carolina School of the Arts, UNCSA, got a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. And this wasn't, Improv 101. This was pure discipline classical theater training.
Wow.
Yeah. And if you think about what that involves, classical training, I mean.
Yeah.
Voice projection, physical commitment, deep character work, analyzing text. It demands this discipline that, can seem totally opposite to the sort of anarchic yes and vibe of improv.
Right, different worlds.
Totally. But it's precisely that grounding, I think, that lets him commit so fully to the most outlandish characters later on, without sort of winking at the audience. He treats the absurdity with, serious theatrical weight.
Okay, that makes sense. So after that intense formal discipline, he immediately just throws himself into the New York City comedy scene. Post-graduation.
Yep.
Moved there with a schoolmate, the actor John Daly. They were ready to, make their mark on that really competitive scene.
Yeah, in New York in the 2000s, that path pretty much meant one thing, right?
Oh, yeah. Immersion in the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater, UCB. That's where he really developed his rhythm, cemented his roots in improv and sketch. UCB was... at that time, it was the absolute hub for alternative, often dark, boundary-pushing comedy. It required you to be quick, inventive, and importantly, not afraid of confrontation.
And he wasn't just, hanging around the edges. He was central to a couple of specific groups that really defined that early, very idiosyncratic style.
That's right. He was half of the comedy duo Cracked Out with John Daly.
Right.
And he was also in the sketch group called Mr. Bay.
Chuckles.
Yeah.
The names alone tell you something. They really do. An embrace of the abrasive and the ridiculous. Cracked Out was known for this manic aggressive energy. This is where that persona, the super intense, fast-talking, maybe slightly unhinged guy, was really forged.
Right.
It was kind of the perfect counter-training to the structure of UNCSA. Classical training taught him how to perform. UCB taught him what to perform, digging into uncomfortable truths through absurdity.
Now, here's a fantastic little bit of history. Really speaks to the financial reality of trying to make experimental art in New York, how he funded his early work. It's brilliant, actually. A loop of luck and creativity.
Oh, it's the classic starving artist story, but with this amazing lucky twist. The sources mention that a popular and surprisingly lucrative New York lottery commercial gave him the financial runway he needed.
Really?
Yeah. To keep pursuing those riskier, non-commercial projects, he wasn't just relying on, waiting tables. This commercial work funded the fun stuff.
He was the little bit of luck guy, wasn't he? In the Take 5 campaign. Ran
Yeah.
for 3 years, 2008 to 2011.
Exactly. Which meant, a constant low-level bit of visibility and, importantly, income, which is just gold for an experimental artist trying to make rent and, put on weird shows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's even this detail that Gelman said the character's inspiration was the rock guitarist Guthrie Govan.
Isn't that great? It just shows his commitment to characterization. Even for a quick commercial spot, he's looking for a specific, intense energy source. Govan's known for, technical brilliance, but also this distinct kind of eccentric stage presence.
Huh.
And that funding, that lottery money, it directly allowed him to develop and workshop his really ambitious one-man show, 1,000 Cats. He did it at various small venues around the city, pure personal experimental theater.
And while he's doing these experimental shows, he's also starting to get his foot in the door with TV and sketch, right?
Yeah.
Doing voice work, early live action stuff.
Yeah.
Getting exposure beyond the UCB bubble.
Yeah, definitely. We see him popping up on key comedy shows at that time, like The Colbert Report. He did some writing for the MTV sketch series Human Giant, which was seminal. And he landed recurring voice roles on shows like The Life and Times of Tim, which kind of laid the groundwork for his later animation career, which is often overlooked but actually pretty significant for him.
Okay, so by the early 2010s, he's got the disciplined foundation, the experimental spirit, a clear comedic voice, and crucially, some financial stability thanks to a lottery ad. Wild.
Pretty wild, yeah.
Which sets the stage perfectly for Section 2, the Adult Swim era and the dawn of dark comedy. This is really when his unique signature becomes nationally recognized, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. This period, roughly 2010 to 2016, this is where he goes from being maybe more of an NYC-specific name to a national comedy workhorse, always balancing those experimental niche projects with, more mainstream broadcast gigs.
And the sheer volume of work he did then is kind of staggering.
It really is.
On the network side, you've got him co-starring as Mr. K on NBC's Go On, that starred Matthew Perry.
Right, post-Friends.
Yeah. That's 22 episodes, mainstream multicam sitcom, 2012-2013. So he's proving he can play a recognizable, if quirky, supporting role in a very traditional format.
But at the exact same time, he's deeply embedded in the cable and alternative scene. He's holding down multiple regular roles that needed that distinct high-intensity Gelman style.
Like Eagleheart.
Exactly. Brett Mobley, Chris Elliott's sidekick, in the live-action Adult Swim series Eagleheart. That was 26 episodes, 2011 to 2014. And he was AJ on the FX comedy Married. Critically respected, maybe a bit niche, but that was 23 episodes.
And then just tons of supporting work all over cable. He was Mr. Gilbert, the aggressive headmaster in the In-Betweeners remake.
Yep, 7 episodes of that.
Hamish Crassus in another period for 20 episodes. That show was nuts.
Hilarious.
And Ronnie in Blunt Talk with Patrick Stewart, 6 episodes there. He was just everywhere, adapting his tone slightly for each, but always bringing that underlying intensity.
And he's getting those foundational film appearances, too. Small roles, but important. The Other Guys in 2010, and he played the super stressed pizza boss in 30 minutes or less in 2011.
Right.
So this whole period, it's really about proving he could translate that niche persona into commercial appeal across basically every medium possible.
However,
the
work that really defined the Brett Gelman experience for a lot of people back then.
Yeah.
The stuff that maybe prepared audiences for how uncomfortable Martin and Fleabag would be.
Yeah.
That has to be his Adult Swim dinner specials.
Oh, absolutely. Those specials were something else. Highly controversial, deeply unsettling, totally unique. They weren't just sketches. They felt like intentional performance art designed to make you squirm.
Yeah.
They're maybe the purest distillation of his whole Gelmania philosophy, but in video form. The first one, Dinner with Friends with Brett Gelman and Friends, that was 2014. It set the template. Take a civilized event, the dinner party, and just systematically dismantle it with awkwardness, passive aggression, outright hostility.
And they didn't just stop there, right? The sources say they escalated conceptually. There were sequels.
Dinner with Family with Brett Gelman and Brett Gelman's Family in 2015, which, likely turned that psychological spotlight inward onto core family dynamics, probably even more uncomfortable.
Probably. And then the really provocative one, Dinner in America with Brett Gelman in 2016. The source material specifically points out its focus was on racism.
Yeah. These were never easy watches. They combined his classical ability to sustain a really committed, dramatic performance within this unbearable, almost theatrical reality, pushing the boundaries of what comedy even meant on cable TV. They felt like intentional acts of confrontation.
Which is a perfect parallel to his podcasting work at the time, actually.
Totally.
This era also saw him get really involved in the burgeoning podcast scene, another crucial outlet for his whole approach to comedy. He was constantly on comedy. Bang, bang.
A fixture there, yeah. And he launched his own podcast, Gelmania, in 2011 on the Earwolf Network. And this show, maybe more than any visual work, really cemented his comedic manifesto, I think.
He gave this absolutely perfect description of what he wanted the show to be. And honestly, it feels like a mission statement for his whole career. He said he wanted Gelmania to, quote, reflect a lot of the fears and anger and sadness of the world, but do that through a really stupid lens.
And if you just take that quote, it explains everything, doesn't it?
It really does.
Murray Bauman's paranoia. It reflects real societal fears, right? Shadowy government stuff, misinformation, but presented through the lens of this highly theatrical, slightly ridiculous character who, needs a Russian translator and vodka.
Exactly.
Martin in Fleabag reflects the deep sadness and anger of a toxic relationship, but filtered through the stupid lens of a guy who's just so oblivious and self-involved, it becomes darkly comical.
That idea, taking real emotional truth and filtering it through controlled theatrical stupidity.
Yeah.
That feels like the key to understanding him.
I think so. And even though Gelmania moved off Earwolf for its second season in 2014, that philosophy was locked in. It defines his approach.
And then late 2016, we hit this huge turning point, his complete split from Cartoon Network and Adult Swim. And it wasn't quiet. It was a very public, principled stand.
Yeah, a massive moment, really significant for his public persona. In November 2016, he announces he's severing ties. And the reasons he gave were serious, multifaceted.
First, he cited the network's alleged poor treatment of female employees.
Right. And second, he specifically called out the network for promoting the controversial sketch show $1 Million Extreme Presence, World Peace.
Which was getting a lot of heat at the time.
A lot of heat. So this departure was huge because Adult Swim had basically been his creative home turf for years. It gave him the platform for his most unique, defining stuff, like the dinner specials.
Stepping away from that, from that niche but reliable platform, purely on principle, that's a massive career risk.
Huge. It signaled Gelman was willing to put his moral and political beliefs ahead of, financial and creative security, but maybe closing that door immediately opened the next one, the one to international mainstream success.
Which brings us right into Section 3, the breakthrough in dramatic range.
Yeah, the timing is just incredible. Almost immediately after that very public split, his career just explodes onto the international stage, starting with the arrival, basically simultaneously, of his two most recognizable roles in 2016 and 2017.
Okay, let's start with Fleabag. He's cast as Martin, Claire's husband, series regular across both seasons, 7 episodes total, 2016 to 2019. And this role, maybe more than any other, showed how his specific brand of uncomfortable comedy could translate into really powerful drama.
Martin is he's the absolute antithesis of the typical sitcom husband, isn't he? He's repulsive, self-pitying, psychologically manipulative, but Gelman commits to it with the precision of a classical actor. He doesn't play Martin just for laughs. He plays the toxicity for uncomfortable reality.
That's the key point, I think. When you watch Martin, you feel the tension and the trauma he inflicts on Claire. That classical training allowed him to ground the character's emotional truth, which made his absurdly inappropriate behavior like, lying about a miscarriage land with genuine dramatic force, not just as a punchline.
Exactly. It totally shifted audience perception. Suddenly, he wasn't just the weird guy from Adult Swim. He was a performer capable of carrying serious dramatic weight within this universally acclaimed narrative.
And almost at the exact same time, he gets announced for Stranger Things as Murray Bauman. Starts out recurring, seasons 2 and 3. Perfect blend of comedy and investigation in that role. But the character became so essential to the plot, handling exposition, driving the paranoia, that he got promoted. Main cast for the massive 4th season. Solidified his international stardom right there.
Murray Bauman is Gelman's comedic philosophy just packaged for a mass audience, isn't it? He's the embodiment of those fears and anger of the world. Shadowy government, Russians, monsters, filtered through that really stupid, albeit functional lens of a slightly unhinged reporter living in a bunker.
He's great at handling exposition, too.
He really is. Think about those long scenes in season 3 where Murray's translating Russian or explaining complicated plans. Because he has that UCB background, that speed, and that intense stage presence from classical training, he can deliver dense, rapid-fire dialogue while staying physically and vocally intense. He keeps you hooked, even when it's just information.
Yeah, totally. Now, while he's hitting it big as an actor, he also made sure he kept control over his own creative voice. The 2017 dark comedy film Lemon feels like his self-authored thesis statement on the kind of comedy he wants to make.
Lemon was a huge creative step. He co-wrote it, starred as Isaac Lachman, this struggling, abrasive actor spiraling out. And crucially, it was directed by his then-spouse, Janicza Bravo. So you had this intimate, collaborative environment allowing him to just dive into the absolute depths of discomfort.
Premiered at Sundance. It was a challenging watch, definitely. A really uncomfortable character study. It proved that even with Stranger Things blowing up, he was still committed to that intentionally abrasive niche work that defined his Adult Swim stuff.
Right, and look at the supporting cast. Judy Greer, Michael Cera, Nia Long, Gillian Jacobs. That tells you about his growing cachet within the indie film world by then.
Definitely. And this whole era, it wasn't just live action either. While he's taking on these main dramatic roles like George in HBO's Camping or Roland Finkelstein in Mr. Mercedes, he kept up a really significant and diverse voice acting portfolio.
Yeah, which is smart. It's the practical work that keeps an actor versatile and, frankly, busy.
He had the main voice role as Jeff in Jeff and Some Aliens for 10 episodes.
Right.
Then moved into Netflix animation pretty heavily. Voiced Marcellus in I Heart Arlo for 18 episodes. And maybe his most beloved recent animated role, Magic Mike, the cynical, perpetually annoyed mushroom creature in Inside Job.
Oh, Magic Mike is pure Gelman.
Totally.
It's that voice, right? Extreme frustration, weary cynicism, delivered with just perfect comedic timing, and the ability to shift from the timing needed for an animated mushroom to the really serious, dramatic roles he tackled in 2024. That's the definition of the range we're talking about.
And that's where you see the full circle land. The industry now fully trusts his ability to handle genuinely dark, complex, dramatic material. In 2024 alone, 2 deeply grounded, serious roles.
Yeah, first, the main role as Milton in the Apple TV Plus drama series Lady in the Lake. 7 episodes, high-profile production, needs grounded, dramatic focus. And second, he took on playing Terry Nichols in the historical drama film McVeigh, Nichols being, of course, the co-conspirator in the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing.
Wow. That transition from voicing Magic Mike to portraying Terry Nichols, that's a stunning endorsement of his dramatic abilities.
Right.
It confirms that classical training from decades ago is now fully informing his mainstream dramatic work.
Absolutely. He truly contains multitudes. I mean, he also slipped in playing the family film villain Mr. Grumps and Lyle Crocodile back in 2022.
Novels. Right. Can't forget Mr. Grumps.
It just speaks to the power of the character actor today, doesn't it? If you define a niche, commit to it, eventually you become essential. You can move fluidly between genre, between medium.
And that intense commitment to his beliefs, his voice, whether it's artistic or personal, that brings us straight to section 4, personal life and vocal activism. Because this part of his story shows that the confrontation we saw in his comedy, it's now very much part of his public identity.
Yeah. First, though, let's touch on the personal history, which kind of delightfully circles right back to where his career funding came from.
Oh, yeah.
Gelman married director Janicza Bravo in December 2015. They met in New York City while working on, and this is almost too perfect, a New York Lotto commercial.
Get out. That's amazing.
Isn't it? The commercial gives him the stability, which lets him do the experimental comedy, which leads to the collaboration that produced Lemon, and oh, by the way, it's where he met his first wife. That lottery spot really was a pivotal bit of luck.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
They divorced in 2018.
Right. And more recently, he announced his engagement to actress and model Ari Dayan on Instagram in April 2023, and they got married in 2025.
Okay. Now let's address his vocal activism. This has put him squarely into some very high-stakes public discussions, especially around global politics. And it's really vital here that we just report this impartially. Convey what the sources say without taking sides or endorsing any views. We're just conveying the reported facts of his public life.
Agreed. The source material is very clear on this. Gelman has been described as a, quote, vocal supporter of Israel on Instagram throughout the Gaza war. And this activism wasn't just, posting things online. It led to a significant, organized public confrontation in November 2023.
directed at TikTok, the social media platform.
Exactly. Gelman was part of a group, a collective of creators and celebrities who publicly addressed TikTok executives in an open letter.
And the core allegation in that letter was very specific.
Extremely specific. The creators claimed the app was directly facilitating and amplifying the spread of anti-Semitism on its platform. That's a direct claim about algorithmic behavior and content moderation policy.
And the source material details TikTok's response.
Mm-hmm.
As a huge global platform, they reportedly countered those claims publicly.
They stated that they regularly moderate anti-Semitic content as well as anti-Arab racist and Islamophobic content.
Look, crucially,
They drew a distinction, stating they do not moderate or amplify content that is expressing political criticism of the Israeli government. And that conflict right there just perfectly illustrates the incredibly complex challenge these platforms face, right? Balancing free expression, political critique, and hate speech moderation, especially during active global conflicts.
Yeah.
For Gelman, though, this was clearly an active, high-profile way of translating his discomfort with systemic issues into public action, taking a stand.
And it wasn't just aimed at American platforms. Later that same year, 2023, the source notes he actually appeared on Eretz Nehederet, which is a hugely popular Israeli sketch comedy show.
Right. And the Times of Israel described his appearance as specifically, quote, skewering the anti-Israel sentiment in the American left, and especially on campus. So that confirms his willingness to engage directly in that political and cultural debate, using comedy as his platform, much like the Adult Swim specials, maybe, but this time with incredibly real-world political stakes.
And there's a clear indication that this advocacy came at a personal cost. The source notes Gelman himself stated in November 2023, quote, "Friends turned their backs on me this month."
Wow. That one sentence really underscores the high stakes of his vocal position. It completes the picture, doesn't it, of a performer who seems unable or unwilling to separate his personal convictions from his public platform. That willingness to engage in uncomfortable confrontation, which maybe started as a comedic tool to explore truth, is now manifesting as very serious, potentially isolating public advocacy. He just does not shy away from the abrasive.
Which brings us nicely to our synthesis, our final takeaways. When we look back at the whole career path, there's this fascinating and consistent pattern. You've got the intense discipline of classical training providing the bedrock. Then the experimental, confrontational world of UCB and Adult Swim providing the unique voice. And those two things together led to this sustained mainstream career where he constantly plays characters who are paranoid or intense or morally ambiguous.
His true genius, I think, lies in using that classical commitment to ground the deeply absurd. His signature isn't just being awkward, it's the intense, believable commitment to an unbearable situation, whether he's hosting a horrific dinner party, translating Russian in a bunker, or being the psychological tormentor Martin in Fleabag.
And we can't forget that lovely, almost perfect narrative loop of the New York Lottery commercial.
It's great.
The financial little bit of luck that funded the early risky comedy, and also the place he met the collaborator who helped him realize his most ambitious film vision, Lemon. That initial lottery win truly funded his entire creative path in a way.
And what really stands out looking across the whole timeline is the profound consistency of his character, maybe. He takes risks, creatively leaving Adult Swim on principle, and politically, through his very public activism now, his whole persona seems predicated on confrontation, whether that confrontation is artistic or ideological.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener?
Yeah.
We've seen Gelman move definitively into really serious, heavy dramatic territory. Roles like Milton in Lady in the Lake, playing Terry Nichols and McVeigh.
Yeah, which raises a really interesting question for you to think about. How will his history, all that time spent injecting genuine, awkward, often painful truth into comedy, how will that continue to inform these increasingly serious dramatic roles? Will that comedic background make his dramatic villains more complex, more sort of painfully human, or maybe just more theatrical? He mastered using drama to heighten absurdity. Now maybe he has to use absurdity to heighten drama.
And what is his entire journey? You know, from an Illinois kid with classical training to an international character actor taking really high-stakes political stands. What does that tell us about the power and maybe the necessary unpredictability of the character actor today? He seems like proof that embracing that niche, confrontational voice can, if it's backed by real discipline, lead you right to the heart of mainstream artistic success.
Yeah. And maybe an interesting final thought to leave you with, connecting right back to the start of our deep dive. Gelman said his original comedic goal was to reflect the fears and anger and sadness of the world, but do that through a really stupid lens.
Right.
as he portrays figures like Murray Bauman or even historical figures like Terry Nichols. How much of his current dramatic work is maybe just a more refined but still present application of that exact same truth-telling stupid lens? Is he still doing the same thing, just on a different stage?
Hmm. That's a compelling thought to chew on. Thank you for joining us on The Deep Dive.